Craig Smoak.
All right, I've been talking about this presentation. We threw up a graphic about a week ago, I think it was. Tony Altimore contacted us. He is a strategist, a consultant. He understands quite a bit about college football. And I just love graphics and images. I do when it comes to helping. Like me, I'm one of those, I need like large crayons to keep me focused, and pictures help. So he contacted us a week ago about a lot of things the Big 12 might be looking at or other conferences might be looking at. And Tony Altimore, is he going to join us on Skype today? Is that right? He is. He's in that corner box on the right-hand side. Tony, good afternoon. How you been?
Hey, guys. Doing well. How you doing?
We're doing
good show so far?
Yeah, it's been so far. We just had a great show with a sports attorney about the National Labor Relations Board and just kind of what it might mean as well. Now, what we're going to do, and normally we do the interviews, we ask the questions. We're going to let you kind of explain a little bit of what you do, how you got into this, and what you're about to show us, because we're sharing the screen with you in your presentation. And on occasion, we'll probably interrupt and ask a question.
By all means. So I do strategy consulting usually for clients. And as we've been going through the realignment mess, it really struck me a couple things. One, that I thought a lot of folks weren't using numbers and data as we were looking at candidates. And two, that a lot of our fans and actually you guys are kind of the exception, a ton of our writers really weren't thinking about it like the athletic directors, and especially not like the presidents and the conferences do. And having done a lot of different college sports work and a lot of work that I do with leadership development, where I've worked with a couple hundred different colleges around the country, I thought that a lot of this stuff really wasn't being shown the way that they had looked at it. So I thought, what if we just threw some numbers at this and put it together, and what would that tell us about who could help the Big 12 most? And two things happened. First, I found that one, it gave us actually the exact answer that they picked. And two, all sorts of other really interesting insights kind of came out of that about why I think a lot of the stuff around the sport right now is the way it is, particularly with conferences and realignment. And given how much your audience really focuses on realignment, it really struck me as something that would help them. So that's why I wanted to reach out, and hopefully they'll get some interesting takeaways. And I sent you guys a link to download the whole thing if people wanted. We're going to kind of hit on some highlights. And then for the folks on the radio, I'll try to also, tell it verbally, not just because it's, hard to read necessarily on the screen, or if you don't have a screen on your radio, folks.
All right.
Yeah. Well, let her rip, Tony.
All right. Let's make sure this is working. All right, there we go. First of all, just real quick for you guys, I saw this a while ago and I kind of laughed. None of this is new. Know that Michigan State found exactly the same thing in the 1940s when the Big Ten was expanding. So for everybody thinking, sometimes this is crazy and new, funny enough, it really isn't. So I just thought I'd show you real quick what I first looked at when we first thought about this. Was really the idea that particularly on the presidential level, they want to see a balance in conference mates, because this isn't just somebody that they're going to play in sports. It's somebody that's going to be voting on things that affect their school. And they really want to have somebody that on an institutional level is one, a school that they want to be partnered with and branded with forever. And two, is really somebody that, like a person, the actual person in the room. Like you guys think about Dr. Livingstone from Baylor. I mean, she's awesome. And she's on the NCAA Board of Governors. She's the type of person you would want in that room. The president of the University of Houston, another one. If you're a president, you want her in that room. And you see with these folks, they look for excellence in everything that they do. So they really try to balance that idea of the sport and the school. And so I first looked at, how can we collect a bunch of different metrics and see what it looks like when we put the sport and the school together to kind of get a little bit of both. And we started to see some really interesting things in a different picture of kind of what it was like. So we took that and kind of created like some different lines of analysis that we looked at. This is kind of just a list of the different factors that we first put into the equation. It came up with a benchmarking idea for the Big 12 of if we were trying to think about, is a school worthy of being in the Big 12? And that's kind of on an institution level and on a team level. The way I thought about it is I thought, all right, you guys have 8 members at the time. Where on all of these, 50 different metrics, where does every team and school fit? are they better than half the Big 12 or not even as good? And it was really interesting to kind of score them and come up with these things about, where do they fit? So, you take a look at, for example, this kind of gives one example, just a U.S. News and World Report rank, which incorporates a whole lot of other things. You look at SMU, they're above your number one. You look at UCF, they're right in the middle. And you look at Boise, and they're off the tail end. And that's not to say that anything is a better or worse. Rank is not necessarily a good or bad thing because schools have different missions. They're doing different things, and there's a million different ways to rank them. So we looked at a lot of different ones to involve them. That's just sort of one as an example. And we kind of saw a lot of different trends here in the schools and in what the Big 12 was looking at. And particularly what was interesting with this is that you had candidates being considered that were, at the extreme elite academic ends all the way down to, much, much further out. But like I said, one of the big drivers is president. So you think about a school like Houston, and that can throw all of your metrics away because you've got a president there who is just an absolute rock star. She's raising money. She's boosting everything. Every metric about Houston is skyrocketing up under her. So you think about the Sheryl Sandberg quote of, if you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, don't ask what seat, just get on. Well, not much question that, Houston's there. Not much question about the rumors. If the Pac-12 wanted to go to Texas, they would want Houston. She's their ticket. And as you guys look at the next step, I kind of just real quick here put, they're talking about round two. And if we think about, the new Big 12, you can kind of see here on one side, these are just one metric of each, but, a football run on the right side and an academic one on the left. And, where do each of these different programs potentially match up? And, ideally you want somebody that you're making a decision on. And that decision can go either way. You can say, I really, I understand the school and I like the school and I don't care that they're not as institutionally with it. Or you can say, you know what, they're building a football team and they're growing and it's okay if they stink now. I mean, the Big Ten kind of did that when they added Rutgers, for example.
Right.
On the other hand, you take a look at, mentioned this to Paul, Boise hired Jeremiah Dickey, and they probably didn't do that just for kicks. They did that because they want to be the next Baylor. And so you look at that and you say, okay, they're building an institution there. My guess would be your athletic directors and your presidents might be willing to bend a little bit more on some of the academic standards. This kind of looks at just, kind of how we scored them in the last round. And it came out to really say that there were about 12, these are just the highlights, but there were 12 schools that came out in the formula to say that they were really sort of qualified, that they were in the midst of or better than the current Big 12 schools on both sets of metrics. And you guys took definitely the best four. BYU was by far the number one. Even with, we had some controversy pieces in there and they still came out in the formula to be number one. So, obviously it was smart for them to pick. This is just kind of an example of a screen. This is looking at round two metrics. This is like institution. So if you look at the green lines there, you can kind of see, schools like SMU, Tulane, Colorado State, great schools. They got a lot of green for, where they match against the Big 12. You look at other folks and, for example, here, look at Boise, you got a lot of red, but look at this on research. They've actually, since they've gotten big in football, they've more than doubled the research that they're doing. So they're doing exactly what, that little Catholic college in Northwest Indiana did, and exactly what that little college USC in a dusty mustard field outside LA did, and sort of building themselves off of football. So kind of cool to think about it. And right now, Boise is right now doing more research than SMU.
Okay, let's stop 1 second. Paul, you have
I wanted to mention, you show that there were some teams, and we've seen a lot of them that you through these numbers just did not qualify because they're not doing all these things and hitting these metrics, right? Yeah,
and qualify it's really more what what the presidents and athletic directors say. But, for example, if you're going to look at, and the Pac-10 is a little bit, or the Pac-12, I still say 10 out of habit, has a little more firm standards, and the Big 10 has very firm standards on its academics where they say, if you don't hit this bar, you're not going to be a member. The Big 12 has some flexibility in that, and that's kind of valuable. I mean, I'll give you an example. West Virginia has some very low metrics, but West Virginia has made it like their mission as a university to educate the people of Appalachia. And they are perfectly okay with the fact that their bottom admissions end is a little more flexible than Duke. And so one of the things that I tried to do in these numbers was to build in that capability so that they were looking at, does this school not just, are they fancy, but are they hitting against their mission? And I think we got that in a lot of them. And you guys got the 4 best.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. And I'm having those who are involved either in athletics or those involved in some things when it comes to television or, even managers and CEOs saying they love I love graphics. I'm a graphics guy. It helps me out a little bit. You kind of validated with your graphics and with your figures, metrics, data, analysts, whatever you want to say, the 4 that they added then, right?
Oh, completely. Those were the 4 by far the best. And I'll tell you, I actually gave BYU, because BYU last time they applied had some kind of dings for some of their various policies and some of their discrimination issues. They even overcame all those dings to be like, this is the school to pick, number 1. But what I thought was interesting is we went through a lot of other stuff about conferences came out that was really interesting. I'm going to kind of forward through just because I know you guys don't have all the time. But what I saw is
Tony, can you go back? Are you allowed to go back one to that with all the blue and light blue bubbles and all that? Okay, yep. To let everyone know, obviously to the right and top is the best, right?
Yeah, to the right and top is the best.
Okay,
usually.
What are and the Big 12 schools are where?
Let me just flick to this one because it's a little easier to see. The Big 12 schools are red in almost all the charts I've got. So you guys can look for red.
Okay.
SEC is yellow. The different alliance schools are the different shades of blue.
Okay.
And what I thought was interesting about the SEC, what I thought was really interesting is this is a chart with how you do on all NCAA sports on one side, going up. So verticals, you do better on all NCAA sports.
Right.
And to the right is as you get a higher academic rank. And this worked even when I changed different metrics. When I used to put football things on the vertical and different academic things on the right, it all kind of held. And I'll show you guys an example of that. But what was interesting about this is the conferences still fit together. So look at the SEC, and I think it's really interesting. The SEC is the yellow. You see, there's really 2 chunks of the SEC. Yeah. They have the SEC as we think about it, but then, and you guys know this better, up in the corner there's Texas and Texas A&M, which are by the way, the bigger the bubble, the bigger their endowment, the more money they have to play with. So you see Texas and Texas A&M and Florida and Georgia are like a whole nother little separate foursome world separate from the SEC, the rest of the SEC as far as institutions and everything. I thought that was interesting. Yeah. And I thought the Big 12 was cool. If you guys can see on here, they really fit together. And in fact, if you look at the old Big 12, and those are highlighted, sorry, I went too far. If you see, you can kind of see there's red around it. The schools that used to be part of the Big 12 fit even better in with it. So you kind of see schools really, the conferences really kind of built themselves together kind of organically based on mostly who they were, with some exceptions like Vanderbilt's the crazy exception to the SEC. And I'll give you a kind of example of where I think that gets interesting. You look at the expansion rumors of the SEC, you hear about them. Oh, they're targeting Virginia and Florida State and Clemson. Those are right there adjacent to them and further out from their own conferences. So it really was a lot about fit. And one of the other pieces that I thought, you guys heard the Mountain West, it's sort of kind of surprising people because they're rebuffing the AAC. But if you look at the Mountain West, it's purple here. They're all this really close-knit group together. They are, very similar institutions. Where this got a little bit even more kind of crazy is this thing I call the Asteroid Belt, which is that all of the weird places that don't really fit were kind of together, and most of them are tied to the old collapse of the old Big East. And so if you look here at how we put a map of it, it lays on there. The gray is the AAC and the old Big East. They're really fitting together, and we see really the impact of the death of the Big East still has today in the SWC in some of the schools like SMU and Tulane and UMass, that in UConn that never really found a real good home. But where I thought was really interesting takeaway was about the alliance. And I know a lot of folks, particularly in the Big 12 and the SEC, kind of scoffed a little bit at the alliance, but I thought it was because culturally they didn't get it. And it turned out there was even a little more to that. So when I looked at the alliance, the core of the alliance is really three groups that are intermingled completely up at that top right. And it's what I call the Pac-5, which are the original 5 founders of today's Pac-12, which are the 4 California schools and Washington. Lots of scandal. The history of the Pac-12 will give the Southwest Conference as much drama as they had. North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, Wake Forest, and Tobacco Road. And then the Great Lakes Club of, Northwestern, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. They all kind of very much fit together in that. And they fit together in a lot of ways. So if you take a look at, there's only 12 schools that are in the top 50 for both ranks, so which technically makes the top 100 because liberal arts is a separate thing. So the top 100 schools, top 50 football programs, there's only 12. 9 of them are in the alliance, 3 in each of those conferences, and then those 3 of the 4 SEC ones that we talked about. And Texas A&M is pretty close. So you really have kind of a little bit of a different culture. And when you look at the ranks of the schools, you see, ACC, Big 10, Pac-12, they have a lot of schools kind of at their front. But then they have these second waves that are kind of a little bit separate. Like the Pac is pretty split. You've got those 5 up in that corner, right, locked tight together, and then kind of a way out drift. But what I thought was kind of wacky is when you actually integrate the full alliance team, they fit together better.
Mm-hmm. And Tony, those are the ones in any kind of blue shade, correct?
Yeah, any kind of blue shape are the different alliance ones.
Okay, all right.
They really fit, and Stanford's that big giant blue circle in the top.
Yeah, that's what's the largest planet?
Stanford.
Yeah.
That's $30 billion in endowment.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Like we think Texas is rich with $30 billion for the entire UT system. Stanford has it for just their little school.
Wow. Like everybody could fit in their bubble. It almost seemed like to me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They really fit. It really fit great closely together. But here's where it got even more interesting. Check this out. When you take a look at these little lines, the line that is BYU and Georgia over, and then on the other side is Arizona State and Colorado over. You start to see, like, culturally, you have almost all the alliance are on one side, almost all of the SEC and Big 12 are on the other. And so I think, when you heard people sort of making fun of it and being like, oh, who cares about diversity and academics? Well, the Big 10 schools are like, that would be us. And part of that also reads, by the way, this holds true against different metrics. You see the same kind of chart with using different metrics. What was really interesting to me about it was 2 things I thought were kind of myths. I'll show you guys. I'm just sort of skipping ahead to show you guys. First of all, these schools are really intermixed. So like the UCLA chancellor was the provost at Virginia for 30 years. The president of Berkeley and UCLA was the president of Ohio State. The president of USC was the president of North Carolina. And so these 3 conferences are really, really, really intermingled closely at the highest ranks. And a lot of them also do things together differently. So for example, when you join the Big 10, you're not just joining a conference. They have integrated fiber optic networks. They integrate their cybersecurity. They have their library systems are together. They scan all the documents for their stuff together. They run their training of professors to become department leaders, all run together. And so when you think about integrating all that, part of the reason that they're so sticky and so closely together is the institutions are actually linked up together really closely. And I think that makes a big difference and is a huge opportunity for the Big 12 of something that they could do more of. And then when you take a look at where it manifests itself, you really start to see them come together. One thing I thought was interesting that I kind of had an idea of was for some of the schools that didn't fit, kind of where they were, I thought about it. Are you really, as a school, as it's somebody like Vanderbilt, is it that they're like, you know what? We want to be here. We know we're this phenomenal school and we're getting our butts pounded to us on Saturdays, but we like being part of the SEC. That's where we want to be. And if you think about a school like Nebraska, that seems like it's out on the yonder for the Big 10, mean, Nebraska is a phenomenal university, and they're probably saying we want to be with Michigan and Ohio State, and Johns Hopkins just joined in some sports. Like that's who we want to play with. We want to play with, Michigan and not with, whoever, pick one of them.
Yeah.
And so I think that when you think about that, there may be some schools saying, that's kind of where we want to be. And that's where I think about Boise fitting in the Big 12 is that, Boise is saying, you know what, we didn't used to be a, national university, and we're going there.
Tony, the feedback again has been incredible.
I've never used the F. Nobody's ever used the F word on this show, but I'm so enticed to. Yeah. Just like holy, what? Because like the documents and the graphics and like the one that really just blew me away was the tie-ins with all the universities. Like that's so in depth and just brilliant. So yeah, I'm just blown away looking at all this information.
But you wanted to ask him this about the next level, right? You've heard us to report, Tony, the Chapter 2 in the Big 12. You've mentioned Boise, Memphis with what they do. They're in the graphic as well, Craig.
Yeah, I was just curious, Tony. We know the 4 that have already been invited, but in terms of the 4 that have been rumored as potentially a second phase, down the line, which would be SMU.
Yeah, it would Memphis and Boise, SMU, and most likely USF.
Yes.
USF. Yep.
Yeah, Tony, where do they fit in your info and in your mind as far as potential Big 12 candidates? Those 4 schools.
So I do kind of look at it as saying what this does is it kind of informs, and then you have to make decisions.
Okay.
And so when we look at, I'm flipping back actually to them. And I think your folks would love actually, there's one other, the financial thing I think that I want to quick flip through. I think that they would really get a kick out of.
Sure.
You look at it, I would say Boise State and Memphis are not on par with the current Big 12 members on academic or institutional metrics. And Memphis is going through the search for a new president. But my guess is that they would probably absolutely want to do, whatever they needed to take advantage of that and become part of and be in the conference.
Well, that's what
the conference is. We want to be in that area. I mean, the other thing is you have limited choices. Mm-hmm. There's only so many different schools, and so you might say like the chances of if I have to pick between the idea of Memphis gets to be a better school or Rice gets to be a better football team, which am I going to pick?
Memphis, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and that's a value question.
Yeah.
Again, I think Boise has made a lot of those improvements, and they've there's nothing you can do more than hiring Jeremiah Dickey and saying, build us a new Baylor.
Yeah, and then Houston was thought of as well. There's a lot of things Houston was thought of, but you mentioned they hired a president. She's a rock star. They're listening to her, and she's turned them around. And so there are teams that are programs, universities that could also learn from what the University of Houston has done in the last few years as well.
And remember too that rankings are a lot of a lagging indicator because it takes years for the stuff you're doing to really hit in the rankings. I really want a quick show. I think you guys might find fascinating the difference, and I'll look at Houston for this. The difference that being a part of the A5 is going to make for these schools. So this is all about revenue, and there's like 3 different groups. There's the Big Ten and the SEC, the other A5, and then the G5. And the G5, I'm telling you guys, cannot keep up. So for example, if you look at here, the red is subsidies from the school. So this is revenue. The G5 the schools are eating the tab for the athletic department. This is the whole athletic department. Versus the A5, the money is coming in from the conferences and the TV revenues. But on the G5 level, the school is paying for that department. And if you take a look at here, this is per student spending. So what does it cost per athlete? So you look at Big 12 schools, by the way, it's only the public schools because we don't have the private numbers. You're looking at $300,000 the Big 12. You're looking at $300,000 per football player they spend. Ohio State spends like $1 million a player, but and $160,000 for a regular athlete. But those football players are earning the money that pays for the entire department because 78% of the Big 12 money goes to those other sports and everything. So we took a look at profitability, and this is where it gets crazy. Now, if you look on here, you see the yellow and the light blue are Big Ten and SEC. This is what I think. It is actually using a cash flow profitability method. So I was a finance major, so this is really looking at like the true money going in. So there's a lot of, in the university accounting, there's a lot of baloney back and forth of like, what is the cost of the scholarship? You charge it to the athletic department, even though you don't really pay that much. So I tried to correct for all that and come up with what was actually the profit amount. But look, for example, here at all the other schools and look at the very end, there's Houston and UCF sitting there. Without the benefit of that money, they're bleeding, $32,000 a player.
Wow.
And when you look at the cash flow, the entire cash flow profitability, you see there, Houston was pumping Houston was essentially losing, I think from a cash flow standpoint, about $40 million a year. And this flips them around. I mean, this literally, you pick that up and all of a sudden now they go from that bottom end to right in the middle when they start getting your revenue checks.
You see why everybody wants to join a Power 5 conference, right?
Yeah. These are the profitability percentages of the athletic departments.
Oh,
wow. Look at you see the G5 on the right. They're just plunging into negative. And actually you have trouble calculating some of the numbers because they don't even go down that far. Then the last thing real quick, not to cut you off, but I think you guys will find interesting. It then extends to all the other sports too. So what I found is you see here, this is all sports, looking at all conferences. The A5 have the money. That's what they pump into the resources and the athletes. And as a result, they win. So conferences, I thought I'd see like the Big East winning a lot of, softball, tennis, stuff like that. The Patriot League, the league that's all the University of California schools that are, don't play football. No, the points are dramatically all with the A5 schools.
Some of the responses on the chat room from Sebastian. This is incredible. Gary, amazing. Chris agreed. Fantastic presentation. Awesome. Thanks. And from Mark, need more of this content. Cool. Incredible. This guy's on point. Learning learning a ton right now. Great questions as well. So, I mean, that's just some of it.
And so just one last thing real quick. I think you're folks will laugh at. So as a Big Ten, Pac-10 guy, I always wanted to vomit when I see those commercials that say, do you care as much as the SEC? And it makes me, want to go and hurl. But I found actually something really interesting. Truth is, the answer is no. And it's really interesting because the SEC, and think about this, you guys, as you hear them talk about, all the stuff they pump into football, Alabama spends more on sports than they do on research. But what's interesting is that because the Big Ten schools, particularly in the Pac-12 schools, have a lot, and the Big 12 is split a little bit half and half on this. They have a lot of money. So they have huge endowments and massive budgets. So actually the importance of the profits of the athletic department are a lot less important. UCLA's won, 300 Olympic medals or something, because they shower money on all of the Olympic sports. What's interesting about the SEC is they're in this interesting middle ground where they're big, great schools, but they also, that money makes a really big impact. And so when I looked here at, I created sort of this index, I called it the SEC Do You Care As Much As We Do index, for how important the sports are the revenues from the sports are at the other schools relative to the SEC. And, they're a fraction.
It looks like the middle finger to me. I don't know about you guys.
Does. Yeah.
That could be a subliminal message to the
oh my goodness. Yeah. And this
there's the Big 12.
Okay. Yep. There you go. This is, so this almost validates, it validates the four, as you mentioned, the Big 12, among those available. And that are joining the conference in the next 2 or 3 years. It
validates the four, but also how critical was the timing, in your opinion, of how quickly Bob Bowlesby and the Big 12 moved on securing those four top teams that were there?
Oh, I thought it was big. I also thought it was completely unsurprising because remember what Bob Bowlesby's background is. Bob Bowlesby was like the legendary athletic director at Iowa, and then he was the athletic director at Stanford. So he's a Big Ten, Pac-10 guy, old school. And two things that really struck me from that is in very like Iowa, very Stanford ways, he moved quickly, decisively, and quietly. That I bet he knew from day one exactly what they were going to do. I also think that by moving really quickly, he prevented a lot of, potential, hassles or problems I love BYU, but they have detractors for numbers of different reasons. And he locked that in, so that there was no time for people to rally anything up. I think they solidified everything. The other thing is that some of those schools, just the way the Pac-10 is, I'll be honest, I was kind of laughing, and I think I said this in an email to a friend who went to Kansas State. That was like, they would have hated the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Yeah. They would have hated it. Yeah. And so, the grass is not always greener on the other side. And so when you think about the Pac-12 was never going to have Boise, and they were never going to have BYU. And so getting those schools homes is really important. I think for the sport, we want stability and a chance for the pie to get bigger for everybody. And so, on that end, I think it's really important and really solid that, we get as many of these schools locked into nice, solid things as we can. And I hope that it'll settle in a way that also the AAC. So when I looked at the numbers for the AAC, people treat the AAC kind of like a foster home, and it's not. They run a great conference, particularly given that half their members would sell them out in a minute. And Mike Oresco needs Man of the Year award for that.
Yeah, for sure.
As you were saying this, I typed this up to one of the chat room comments about this all makes sense on how the Big 12 reacted maybe when a lot of people thought they were dead in the water. And I wasn't sure if they weren't, but because of who they have, advisors, consultants, and as you said, I typed this up as you were saying this. This is why they move so quickly, emphatically, and almost like a silent assassin with a major comeback. Was that how you would say it?
I would definitely say it. And the other thing is, you think about Oliver Luck. Oliver Luck is people say, oh, well, I don't, why do we count academics? Oliver Luck was a magna cum laude Rhodes Scholar finalist who sent his 3 kids to Stanford. They weren't going to choose dummy schools.
Yeah. Hey, Tony, and I know this is your work, if somebody wanted to get a hold of this, can they? I mean, I know we've already put it up.
You guys a link.
Okay.
They could reach out to me if they wanted. And I sent you a download link. I'll leave that up for a week or so.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to, if you want to text us, we'll also try to help you get in touch with that information.
Yeah. Please, by all means. And there's a lot of other stuff in there. I think it's really interesting. A lot of questions I think, people should ask and leaders should think about. And you guys will sort of see some other kind of, deep dives on some areas. And, kind of looking at the conferences, just the big thing is, just so everybody knows, I try to use as many different factors as we can, and know that nothing is judgmental because they're all just ratings on different things. So and schools have different missions.
So Tony, if I was to ask you the next level, because they have chapter 1, that's in bed. Chapter 2 is maybe chapter 2 plus 2 or 4, right? It's Boise State and Memphis. You do concur with that, right?
Yeah, I would do the 5, and I would do the 4. I'm sorry. And the reason I would do that is because Jim Delaney, when they added Penn State, supposedly, or they added Rutgers and Maryland, supposedly was really concerned sort of about Penn State kind of out there on their own. There's a couple I wouldn't want to leave Central Florida too much on their own. Yeah. That far away, so it kind of helps to have somebody there. The other thing about SMU is, you're talking about a great school, a lot of potential, right by the airport, which, Pac-10 people, they love. Their schools are all right by airports. It's great, other than Washington State. And you really have a chance then to kind of lock everything in, own that area. Nobody else is going to step in and take your schools, or at least they have a lot harder. You're not leaving people out there. The other thing is the Big 12 has a chance to create a culture of its own now, which is really cool. Yeah. In the past, the Big 8 was really a lot of Nebraska and Colorado and Oklahoma. And when Texas came in, they were larger than life. You have this really cool chance to build culture. And so I think you're probably better off getting as many people in the room as fast as you can for that. And
it appears that's what they're going to do. A lot of it depended on the Pac-12 and their television revenue, which is just a matter of time, and also the college football playoff expansion. Tony, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I made my comment about the F word earlier, but, I think that there's an incredible amount of information that you showed us, but there's also, as you said, so much more for people to go and check out as well and have a lot of fun looking through. I mean, it's just incredible, Tony. Like, it really is, man. Amazing job.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Yeah, just a totally different way, but the smart way of looking at everything instead of just the fan way or the, whatever. So, yeah, just brilliant stuff.
Well, and I told you this on the phone earlier this morning, Tony. I think the important thing, like the great thing about having you on is we have so many listeners that are trying to do the math without the math in their head. Like, they're trying to make all this work and like, oh, you should have UConn and San Diego State. And you, like I mentioned to you, like, I don't know if the people thought of it. They didn't want to play volleyball on a Wednesday, like doing that. Like the UConn, as much as they'll have fun going to the zoo and everything, I think that maybe they'll get tired of that after a while. And you've given all the background information as to how this stuff really works. It's not just trying to play Connect Four.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you, one last thing that's really kind of interesting I found, and Paul and I mentioned this a little bit, is that when you look at scheduling, like if they were to really take the Alliance stuff and integrate it better, which I think they should, the Big Ten and the let me see if I can flick to that. The Big Ten and the ACC actually line up really well. Let me flick back to it to do like group trips. So like you actually could do like a lot more trips of like groups of teams where you could actually like, charter planes. And all of a sudden now you're looking at, being able to keep kids in 3 more days of classes, play 4 games at 4 national teams and be back home, Sunday night. Because they actually fit together pretty well airport wise and stuff. You could actually do some really interesting logistics with that.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Tony. I mean, everybody's going nuts. They love it. Again,
no
Tony
stone
Altimore,
left unturned.
Give your I don't have it in front of me. I know we've had you on. Give everybody your Twitter handle. Is it just straight up your name, right?
It's close. It's my Twitter is at TJ Altimore. Altimore is like Baltimore with no B. So TJALTIMORE. It's also, I think I sent the link. I don't know if you guys can put that on like the description or whatever. Again, I put actually the whole 220 pages if people want to download it. This is kind of another example on there of, what I thought they could do. As far as, Alliance stuff, you could really look at like relegation and promotion. So there's a lot of potential. I mean, I think the Big 12 could look at that too. If the Big 12 gets bigger, you're looking at 16 teams. Maybe you want to have an A league and a B league, and because your A league can compete with anybody, and nobody can criticize.
Tony, thank you. I just had this one more from Daniel. I am a business analyst at work, and this presentation is amazing. It would have taken me weeks, if not months, to do something like this. Kudos to Tony.
Oh,
Thanks for your time. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
And I'll tell you this. This is stuff the Big 12 has known. It is. And I know Bowlesby deserved to get kind of knocked to the canvas, and probably himself may have knocked himself to the canvas, but he was a silent assassin in some ways, along with his analysts, consultants, and advisors. And that's why they acted so fast, and why, even though, man, we don't want so-and-so, you're seeing now, and you heard what Tony said, why you want to get the room filled quicker now, if you possibly can.
And all I said whenever the rumors were going around about, potentially that second wave and bringing up a school like SMU, I was like, okay, I'm not all for that in my mind, because I think I immediately go to recruiting, or I immediately go to that. But I also said, but if you can give me a reason why it makes sense, then I'm all ears to listen to it. And then we got Tony's presentation a few days ago, and also a little bit of talk about why SMU. Okay, now it makes sense. Like, that's all I need. Like, I'm not anti anybody, but give me a reason. Give me the reasons why. And his presentation gives you a lot of reasons why the Big 12 picked the schools they picked, and why they are eyeing the schools that they are potentially eyeing.
Oh, I got a story that could be a part of the Big 12, and this is from the Daily Memphian. You remember all the stories we've been talking about? Remember John Martin from ESPN in Memphis? Remember what we discussed with the Liberty Bowl? Remember what I told you this show explained to you yesterday about Memphis and the Liberty Bowl? The Daily Memphian is reporting the naming rights deal with Simmons Bank will help make the dramatic improvements to the stadium, the Liberty Bowl, Mayor Jim Strickland just announced.
Well, that's good news. Bank.
Weird timing.
Yeah.
Man.
Hey, I hope you love us now, because that is as good as you get. I hope. And
please hit the like button right now if you're one of the 460 watching right now.
Give it up to Tony, and definitely we'll have that link available, and you can have however many hours of fun you want to have, because like that was a scraping the surface basically.
It was, and this is something that in those meetings when the Big 12 said, okay, we got nearly TKO'd, right? This is what they've had in their midst. This is what they have. This type of stuff is what allowed them to kind of like, here's a chunk. And that's what they've been doing.
Yeah, and I think Bowlesby does deserve credit for as much as he caught flack for the entire Texas-Oklahoma debacle. I do think that not a lot of blame should go on his shoulders for the way that it happened, the secrecy of it, the surprise of it. I mean, I can see how Texas and Oklahoma and the SEC could operate to where, it doesn't get around to Bowlesby, and clearly it didn't get around to Bowlesby. But, at the same time, there's part of me that says, well, it's not like Texas hasn't been barking for years now, and it's not like Oklahoma hasn't barked quite a bit as well, and it's not like we didn't know that, those are two teams that could have options. And, so you had to be aware of that. So I don't clear him fully, because clearly there was time to like try to settle the waters previous to that and not, end up where they ended up. But having said all that, he deserves a ton of credit for how quickly they turned around and they shored up their defenses. And now being even more proactive and potentially going even beyond that, I think he deserves a lot of credit. So for as much as there was some angst and whatnot early on, I think, that's completely 180'd for Bowlesby over the last month or so.
So we had the presentation from Tony Altimore, and some of you are asking for the link. We'll try to get that up for you. Secondly, we had Dan Lust on sports law on the National Labor Relations Board, because I got to tell you, that stuff goes right over my junior college head. And so it was great to have him on to explain some things as well. And Dan just answered one of the questions we had about the unions and all that. I don't think they can ban unions while still offering something that resembles the same traditional college sports system. Like you, I also do fear the schools could elect to drop certain sports. This isn't going to see near unanimous public support like the NIL movement.
Yeah, that's the thing is like we said, that was a recommendation or, just a statement that was released. It wasn't a ruling of any sort. And so, this isn't inevitable necessarily. I mean, like a decision's inevitably going to have to be made one way or the other. But, it's not like this starts tomorrow, everybody freak out. And I do think there are probably going to be some more people that do wake up and realize, hey, this isn't just as simple as NIL. This is like you could blow the entire thing up if you misstep here. So hopefully they're stepping lightly and being smart about what steps they're taking.
So the Daily Memphian comes down with that story. We just told you